Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our seed harvest session. I don't want to take up too much of our time talking. I don't want to take away from Kat or our weekend. I'll just quickly introduce the webinar team that we have helping out today. Myself, Lisa Graves, Anita Caldwell, and Ruth Cooper. So we'll be working behind the scenes to help today's presentation run smoothly. If you're having any technical difficulties, please just type it into the chat and one of us will help you. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Kat. Thank you so much for doing this for us today, Kat.
Wow, that was really short, Lisa. Hold on a second, let me find my video. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Seed Harvest edition of our Plant Along. And today is going to be a more relaxed session as far as I'm concerned, because there's a lot less information to cram into 1 hour. So next week is going to be a longer one when we talk about redding. But today we're going to have lots of time for questions and discussions, and the questions don't have to, of course, they never have to do with what we're talking about in the session, but even more so today because we have a little bit more time to talk about it. So I'm also, just as Lisa's getting shorter with her introductions, I am also going to dispense with my technical help slide. If you have any problems, as Lisa said, please type them into the chat and our team will try to help you that way. So why don't we start by just opening up the floor? And if anybody has anything that they want to say about what they've done so far, or questions or stories, please feel free to share it with the group. Okay, people just want to listen. Okay.
Kat, we have a question. Sorry, Kat, we have a question about your shirt. Someone would like to know more about your shirt.
More about my shirt. It's a very light cotton, very comfortable. I don't know what else to say about it. It required a total change of wardrobe as I had the wrong foundation garments and they showed through the lace this morning. It's one of those shirts you only wear on really hot days. So I'm kind of looking forward to what the weather's going to be like today and the rest of the week. Any other questions? I know you probably got a little more information than you wanted to in that answer. Did I see that Joan had a question? Yeah.
Yeah, just a comment. I've been growing a small plot of flax in my front garden, and I've had lots of interesting questions from people going by. Some people have asked me about it, and also some of my neighbors are Polish, and they say, "Oh, I remember seeing that grown at home in Poland." And they recognize the plant, so they've been. Some of them are quite keen to follow the progress. So it's all pulled now and drying, of course. But I thought it was interesting that it brought back some memories for some of my neighbors.
Yeah, I find that when I demonstrate at Westfield Heritage Village, that there are a lot of people who come to visit and remember seeing it when they were children or hearing stories about it from their grandparents. So it does really bring people together. Well, we'll move forward. So today, this is our agenda for today. I'm going to, first of all, talk about safety. We're going to be starting today and getting into further sessions. We're going to be doing things that can hurt you. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I'm also going to talk about how to know when to harvest your seeds from the stalks, and I'm going to go into the technical, as technical as it gets, details about rippling, threshing, winnowing, and then a brief little slide about storage at the end. So on to my safety page. So as people who work with fiber, it's likely that you work with pointy metal implements. If you use hackles, if you use wool combs or even wool cards, you can stab yourself fairly easily. And so I'm sure that a lot of you already do have tetanus shots to protect you in case that happens. When you're working with Flax, especially if you get into some of the purpose-built tools, you're going to have even more pointy objects, and I find that my Flax tools tend to rust because I use them outdoors and just because of the conditions that they live in. So it becomes even more important to make sure that you're protected from tetanus when you're working with this. I don't go a session when I'm processing without getting some kind of scratch from my implements. And often when you're doing something, you're performing the actions with force, and so you have less time to draw back if you see that you're going to be hitting your hackle, for example. So I strongly encourage you to make sure that your tetanus shot is up to date if you start working seriously with Flax, or even not seriously. My mother fell down on the pavement, and her doctor gave her a tetanus shot just in case she got something in her scab. So please be cautious. Gloves. Starting with your dry flax today when you're harvesting, and then definitely going forward to the processing after retting, the stalks are very brittle, and you can get splinters and jabs from the stalks of the flax. Gloves are really helpful. There are some nice gardening gloves that are nice and light and not too hot that are good to wear. So gloves will protect your hands as well. Glasses. Starting today with the seed harvesting, there's going to be a lot of little bits of dried plant matter flying around, and to get those in your eyes can be at best irritating and at worst vision threatening. So glasses are helpful. Any kind of glasses are better than none. Safety glasses, if you want to get all techie about it and super cautious, would also be helpful. And then finally, masks. So the work that we're doing today, you're going to be generating a lot of dust. And if breathing in dust is an issue for you, then a mask would definitely be advised. After the retting process, some of the bacteria that are used in the retting, or not that are used, but that develop during the retting process, will be present, usually dead, of course, because it's all dried out. But as the dust flies, breathing that in can be bad for you. And especially if you are doing this in an enclosed place, which I would not advise. But dust masks are very helpful for protecting your health. Having said all that, you'll see in the videos that I'm going to show today that I'm not wearing protective gear. And as I'm sure you've all experienced, it's one of those do what I say, not what I do. Some of my videos in the processing section, you'll see me wearing some gear like that, mostly gloves. But please take your own precautions and keep yourself safe. Okay, so first slide. When are you going to ripple? When are you going to take the seeds off of your flax? So it usually takes between 10 days and 3 weeks for your flax to fully dry out. And it depends on the weather. So here, since I harvested my flax 2 weeks ago, we've had lots of spells of rain and then dry and heat and then rain. And I was shuttling my flax into the shed when it rained and out when the sun came out to make sure that it was as dry as possible. And often looking at my flax drying across my yard, I would say, oh, I think it's all done. And I'd get out there and it would look like the picture on the left. I would still see green in the middle of my bundles. It's not done. You just have to be patient until it dries out. You want it to look more like the flax in the right-hand picture, where the stalks are all tan. I think there's a little bit of green here still, so I probably could have left it, except that I had this presentation today, so it got rippled. Of course, you might not care. If you're not saving the seeds for anything, then then this processing it when the flax is in this state is perfectly fine. But we're going to assume that since you're here, you want to save your seed. So you wait until the straw is completely tan. The bolls will have turned all to tan or to a darker brown. So you can see that on the top of the picture. Here we see, you can see some of the nice brown bolls up here. So the bolls were telling me it was dry, but the stalks were still green here. Don't leave it, if you want to save your seeds, don't leave it much longer than 2 months. Excuse me. Mostly just because the seed will start to degrade if it's not stored properly, and storing it just on the stalk like this for longer than 2 months isn't ideal seed storage conditions. So that's why I say about 2 months. Also, critters love to eat flax seeds, and if you'd just be encouraging animals to snack, come and snack if you leave it in a place where they can find it. So if you harvest the seed and then put it away, then you're kind of nipping that problem in the bud. So are there any questions or comments about when to ripple?
Kat, we did have a question come in about determining when flax was ready. So I'm not sure if you want to share that, save that to the end.
Okay, flax was ready for what?
Harvesting.
So, for harvesting. Okay, well, that was covered more in the last video, but just quickly, what I would say, excuse me, for that is to look at the color of your seed bolls. And so what you're looking for is you're looking for all your seed bolls to be yellowish and to have a few of these tan ones. And the seed boll will tell you whether it's ready to harvest or not. So seed boll color is your best guide. When that happens, you will usually have about half to 2/3 of your stalks looking yellow. But the seed boll color is the primary gauge for that. Were there any other questions?
She also shared a picture, so I'm happy to email that to you, Kat, if you want, if that's helpful.
Sure.
Okay. Someone else has asked, Elaine, how much flax do you need to save? I mean, how much flax will give you, say, 10 grams of seed?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. If you want to gauge, I would say go to Bulk Barn and grab some of their flaxseed and put it in a little baggie and have them weigh it for you. If you don't remember what the amount that you got when you started was, what that looked like, that would be how I would gauge it. I don't have a visual for you for that.
And one more question, but I have a feeling you're going to be covering it. How do you store the seeds?
Okay, I'll be getting to that. Yes, you're right. I'll be talking about that. That's my last slide in the presentation. So just be patient and we'll get there. Okay, so rippling is the first stage in the seed harvest. So rippling is refers to removing the seed bolls from the stalks of the flax plant. Got a couple points there. A big job cloth is very useful for this because as this happens, the seed bolls will pop off of the stalks and go flying. The bigger a drop cloth you have, the more likely it is that it's going to land on the drop cloth, and you'll be able to kind of gather it more easily by just picking up the edges of the drop cloth and having all the seed bolls fall toward the center. This does make a mess when you're doing it. So you want to be in a place where you don't mind. You're going to be getting a lot of the leaves that are still attached to the stalk will fall off when you're doing the rippling, just in the handling of the stalks. And the seed bolls, of course, are falling, but the little twiggy bits of the flax stalk that attach the seed to the main stalk of flax will be coming off as well. So this is a messy process. So big drop cloth is good. So I'm going to be showing first my own ripple that is made from the wool gatherer plans, and then I'm going to be showing another video with tools that you can just find in the dollar store or around your house. The best of those is a dog comb, and I'll show that and talk about that. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about a comparison between my ripple and a vintage ripple that I have, in view of if you have decided that you want to have your own flax processing tools made and you've opted for the wool gatherers plans, some variations on what they've done that I think work a little bit better that you might consider before you commission that work. Okay. So before I start the video, I wanted to talk about my ripple here. So in the wool gatherer plans, the ripple head and the various hackle heads all come off of the handle base. So you can have only, you can commission only one of these handles and then just keep switching the heads depending on what you're doing. So when I had my tools made, I opted to have 3 of the bases made, and my plan was, and the way that I use them is to keep my 3 different hackles attached pretty permanently to the bases. And then when it's time to ripple, I take off one of the hackles and replace it with my ripple head. Now, the way that the screw holes for attaching it are placed both in the head and on the handle means that on this particular handle, my ripple head is vertical or along the line of the handle. In most vintage and traditional, if you look in the bottom right picture, you can see that the ripple head is perpendicular to the line of the handle. That's a little bit easier than the way that this is set up, but that's just because of hole placement. So that's something that can be, you can think about that if you're having these tools commissioned. Okay. So here we are. There's, I'm showing here that it's vertical. There are the holes in my ripple head. If the holes were sideways, I could have it placed. But in this case, it's fine because the teeth on this ripple are fairly wide. And I find that when I pull the flax through, which is basically how you ripple, it helps to pull the flax through this ripple on an angle. Because the teeth are spaced so wide apart, if I go squarely against it, perpendicular to the teeth, then a lot of the seed bowls just slide right through my teeth. So I would be pulling it through on an angle in any case. As you're rippling, you're going to be working with your tools to find out the most efficient placement of the flax and the ripple. So as I said, in this case, it is placing my flax at an angle and pulling through on an angle so that most of the seed heads are caught in the teeth. So the next video I'm going to be showing, my non-traditional tools. Whoops, there we go. So here is my dog comb. I don't know if I got this at a pet store or a dollar store. I have 2 different brushes. If you have one of these are really handy for thick hair. And then I had kind of a pick brush for really, really curly hair. So with the dog comb, I like to wear jeans because I'm going to be combing against my leg and pulling the seeds off. This is really efficient. And often if my ripple happens to be in the very back of my garage and I don't want to dig back to get it, I'll just grab the dog comb, which I have in a drawer, and I will use the dog comb to do all of my rippling. So the ripple is really an easy thing to substitute. Now, showing with my my thick hair brush, this also works fairly well. Just combing the seed bowls off. You can see on the ground there's the seed bowls, and then the darker brown is the leaves that are all coming off of the stalks as I'm working with them. So that did a fairly good job. I like that one. And now my least favorite one. This was something that I hadn't actually used before, but I was just looking for things that might work. It has the wide teeth, but as I started using it, I realized that it was too bendy, a little flimsy. So you want something pretty sturdy to ripple with. So after I found that, I went back to my old favorite, the dog comb, and finished up with that. And that was a nice, easy finish to the job. And these dog combs, sometimes this one happens to have a double tine of teeth to it. I've also seen them single. I don't have a dog, so I don't need one for a dog. But in the pet store, I've seen them just a single row, and those would work as well. Okay, so now my comparison of my ripple with a vintage ripple. So you can see the width of the spaces between the tines is much bigger on the wool gatherer than with the vintage one. And the tines are smooth, the nails were smooth on my commissioned one, and on the vintage one, they actually have a spiral to them. So I love this vintage ripple. This is actually my favorite ripple, and it's worth digging through the garage to find to use, because it takes me at most 2 passes to get all the seeds off of my flax when I use that vintage one. So if you are having a ripple made, if you opt not to go with the dog comb, for example, and you want to have one made, think about making sure that the nails are fairly close together. And as in this one, the nails have a spiral to them. Now, in this case, in this vintage one, the nails are also quite rusted. And while I care about the rustiness of things in my other tools, I don't care quite as much at this stage. It's not going to be tearing up my flax with the pitted rust. So so the rust is fine, and I'm not going to bother doing anything. I'm not going to try to get rid of the rust for that. Okay, any questions about rippling?
None specifically to rippling.
Okay.
We just had some comments about the chipmunks from a few different people. They seem to be wreaking havoc.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good luck. they are cunning little critters. So just do the best you can. Even some chicken wire. Sometimes it just takes the finer mesh to keep them out, or in a building that they can't get into. Although of course then you have the mess that the leaves make as they fall on the ground when they're drying. But I have some very bad pictures, too bad to put into my slide deck, of chipmunks just sitting on the seed heads and just filling their cheeks full of flax seeds. So I feel your pain.
We have another question. Joan is saying that she has a wool hackle. Could that be used too?
Absolutely. Absolutely, it's going to get all dusty. So if that's a concern for you, that you feel that you won't be able to clean it adequately to work with your wool after, then you might not want to do it. But it's not going to hurt it in any way. This is the flax is a much weaker customer than the wool hackle and the wool combs. Okay. Moving along then. Okay, the next slide is all about threshing. And as you can see by the video start on the right, you can do this at any time of year. And I shot my video, this is I think this February that I was doing the threshing on last year's seeds. So I had taken the seed bowls and I had put them in a freezer bag and tossed them in my freezer so that to keep the seed a little bit to stop the natural aging process, I should say, by putting it in the freezer before I did it. But there are tricks like that you can do to space out the work that you have to do. So what I have to do about threshing. So what is threshing? So the threshing is the act of removing the seed from the seed bowl so that we can access it more easily. So basically we want to crush the bowl so that the seed and the bowl material separate. And that's what threshing is. And there's all sorts of people are very familiar with the idea of threshing grain, and maybe are familiar with what a grain thresher or flail looks like. So if a wheat flail, for example, is a long stick with maybe rawhide loop that attaches to a shorter stick, and then that gets beaten on the wheat. This is the traditional flail. A flax flail doesn't look like that. A picture of a traditional flax flail is on the bottom here. It is a block of wood that's flat on the bottom with a stick on it. And the action is to push down with the flail to crush the stalks. I have never seen a flax flail in true life. I've only ever seen pictures of them. With respect to what we can use to thresh our flax with at a small scale like we're doing, there's lots of options for you. It's an easy thing to do. So I've heard of people just putting their seeds on the driveway and driving their car over it and then gathering them up. That seems a little extreme to me, but hey, whatever works. A lot of people like to put all their seed bowls in a pillowcase and tie it off somehow, and then walk on it. Maybe one of those pillowcases that has a zipper end would be the easiest for that. Some people, the people that I've heard do this usually have a bigger operation and want to have the power to make it happen, but they will take a powered grain mill, the mill for actually making flour from seed, and they can set it wide enough that when they put the seed bowls in, it will crush the bowls, but it won't grind the flax seed. So if you have a grain mill that can be set that wide, that might be another option, either manual or powered. That would be another option, or just roll it with a rolling pin. And that's the method that I use. So I use a container, cat litter container. So while I don't have dogs, I do have a cat usually somewhere in my life. So I do have cat paraphernalia. So a cat litter container is big enough to hold the wine bottle. It's a little too narrow for a rolling pin, which is why I came up with the wine bottle idea. And it has high enough sides that things won't scatter too much as I'm threshing. So here is the video of me threshing. So like I said, I had some seed bowls that I had set aside to do my threshing later. I just throw them in my container, not too thick, because you want to have a hard surface underneath so that it has something to break against. And if you put too much seed, it's going to cushion it. It's going to be harder to break the seed bowls. So I also have a dowel that I sometimes use, although the bottle is my preferred tool. So I love this. It makes a crushing, crunkling sound when you're actually threshing the seed bowls. I love the feel of it in my hands. As you do it, it starts out feeling kind of dry and papery, but as more seeds come out, it changes and feels kind of cool and slippery as you feel more of the slides of the seeds. And I like that textural difference. Another reason I don't wear gloves when I should, because I like the input from my fingers. So then that's all there is to it. Just keep moving the seeds around until everything gets crushed. Any questions about threshing?
Not about threshing. We did have one going back to removing seeds. Jane is asking, do you need to be concerned about harming the flax stems at all, breaking them?
No, you don't need to worry too much. The kind of action when you're pulling it, you're pulling along the long length of the flax fiber. So or the flax stalk, I should say. So it shouldn't have any bad effect on the fiber inside. If I think it would be inefficient to do it any other way. Although I'm sure there's, people are creative. They might find some way to bend the flax stalk as they're doing it, but you might want to try and avoid that. Change your grip if you're finding that you're bending the flax stalks.
And Sarah is asking, when threshing, do you need to use a lot of pressure? Is there a risk of crushing the seeds?
No, the seeds are going to be very strong and they're very flat. So they'll fall onto their flat side and you won't be able to crush them. There might be a danger if you go through that grain mill option, because that's designed to crush seeds. And if you don't have it set properly, then that might crush them. But any of the other methods, and my wine bottle method is not going to harm the seed. Even the car rolling over it isn't going to harm the seed.
One more question from Carol. How do you separate the seeds from the other stuff?
That is the next slide. Thank you for that intro. So I am going to slide right over into winnowing, which is how you separate the seed from the chaff. So the chaff is a collective term for what you don't want. You want the seed and you want to get rid of the chaff. Now the chaff is made up of leaves from your rippling process that are still all mixed up with your seed. Your chaff is also made up of bits of the seed bowl that were the structure of the bowl that you are getting rid of. And so we are going to get rid of that through winnowing. So that's what winnowing means. It means to remove the chaff from your seed. So you need, all you really need are a couple of containers and a breeze. And you can winnow your seed. And what is going to be happening is you're going to have your seed and chaff mixture in one container, and you're going to slowly transfer it to another container, a larger container, to catch it. And all of that stuff is going to come down because of gravity through airflow, either from a breeze or from a fan. And as it falls, the airflow pushes the chaff, which is lighter than the seed, aside, and the seed falls down into the container. And you'll just keep doing that until the chaff is gone to your satisfaction. To your satisfaction, for me, that means there's still some chaff in my seed when I'm done. I don't mind that because this is not seed that I'm going to be eating, so it's not going to be getting stuck in my teeth or taste nasty or feel weird when I chew on it. And it's actually a little helpful for me when I'm scattering my seed when I am planting it the next year as a marker to see where the seed is landing, because the chaff is going to be a lighter color than the flax seed, and so that helps. Although it's not great because there's a little bit of winnowing that goes on when I'm planting, and some of that chaff, if there's a breeze when I'm planting, will fly away and give me false readings as to where my seed is. But that's another problem for another day. So to your satisfaction is most of the chaff gone. So containers that you use, in the picture on the top right, I use my trusty cat litter container for the big collecting container. I have a small little mixing bowl that I use to drop the seed down with. A breeze, you have to check the weather if you're going to rely on Mother Nature, or you can opt to go with an electric fan. So I do not use an electric fan because I'm fortunate enough to live in a house with air conditioning. I don't need a fan, and it's a small house. So to buy a fan just to do this is taking space that I would rather use for more hackles or other tools. And I would rather just wait for a good day when there's a breeze and use the breeze to winnow my grain. So for me, it is mostly a storage issue that I don't have a fan. But if you have a fan and you want to use it, again, remember that when you're using it, it might get dusty. So if it's something that you use in your house, you might want to take that into consideration, that it might get dusty and start looking a little dirty. And there's little, nooks and crannies in fans that are hard to clean. So keep that in mind. When you're directing the airflow with a fan, you have options. You can manipulate where the fan is and the direction of the airflow. So I've heard of people who direct the airflow downward across. So if your seed is falling in a vertical column, people have tried all sorts of things. Downward doesn't seem to be favored at all. A lot of people blow straight across, but I've heard a lot of people who speak very positively of angling the airflow upward. So what that seems to do is, as the seed and chaff are falling, when the air flows upward, it blows the chaff up a little bit, which gives it a little more chance to land farther away from the seed. So it increases the separation of the seed fall and the chaff fall. And that is a, excuse me, and that is a good thing. So you're going to, once you get set up to do this, when your seed falls, it's not going to fall just straight. It's going to spread out a little bit in the air currents. So you want to make sure that your collection container is big enough to contain it for the most part. You might want to bring out your big drop cloth again to put around you to contain some of the seed that falls outside of the container, so that you can capture that. And that's it for airflow and the containers. Some people also use screens to help them to save a little bit of time on the winnowing step. There's two types of screens. So there's a large mesh screen, and you would use this before you start any other winnowing. And what happens with this is, when you put your material, your threshed material, into a large mesh screen, the seeds that are already free and the small chaff will fall right through. And what will be left in your screen, or your colander, or your pasta strainer or steamer, any tool like that will work. What will be left in your large mesh screen is the bolls that haven't been crushed yet, and the little twiggy bits of the flax plant that join the boll to the plant. And so you can take those out and rethresh them, or just, if it's mostly twigs, you can just put that in your compost or whatever you do with your waste. And so the large mesh screen is really helpful. The small mesh screen has the opposite action. And the idea of using a small mesh screen is that the flax seeds stay behind, and what falls out are the dusty bits of chaff, smaller dusty bits. I don't use this. I would use a colander. But I rarely use a small mesh screen, mostly because I haven't been able to scrounge anything from my kitchen or other places where the mesh is the right size. It's either the mesh is a little too big and the seeds fall through, in which case it's just like a large mesh screen, or it's too small and nothing gets through the mesh. So I tend not to do that. And again, like I said before, I don't mind if there's little bits of chaff in my winnowed seed. I find it helpful in the planting stage. So I think that's all I have to say before I show you the video. So this is my winnowing, and it's all mixed up. Looks, you can see I didn't go through a large mesh screen today. So another option is just to shake it. The lighter stuff is going to fall, it's going to rise to the surface. The heavy flax seeds will fall to the bottom, and then you can gather it. So you can see those little twiggy bits are pretty easy to pick out. Add those to my flower bed. So you can see that the breeze is blowing the chaff toward the camera. And if you look inside the container, you can see the dark brown flax seeds are collecting there. Lots of chaff is flying away. And I'm adjusting where I hold the bowl as the breeze changes to make sure that the seed lands in the container and the chaff flies out as much as I can. It's a very dynamic process. Again, if you have an electric fan, you're going to be doing a little less adjusting, because the fan will blow a constant stream of air and you don't have to worry about that too much. So I'm seeing a bunch of bowls down there. So back I go, do a little bit more threshing with my water bottle. unfortunately for me, the breeze seems to have died. So everything is falling back into my container. So that's one of the downfalls of having Mother Nature help you. So after that, I decided that I was in a little too sheltered location. It was cold out, so that's why I had set up my camera in that location to shoot that first video. So what I did after that is I took my 2 containers and I moved to a different part of my yard where the breeze was a little more evident. And once I was up in a bigger area, I could take advantage of the breeze coming from different directions. So I was pretty much standing in place, or not standing in place, turning to follow the breeze. I had my cat litter container in one hand and my winnowing bowl in the other. And as I felt the breeze change, I would move to take advantage of that. And so I took another video of the ground, the chaff on the ground after I was done. And you can see the fall of the chaff depending on where the breeze came from. So you can see the prevailing breeze from this huge pile of chaff. There was a slightly, almost as strong in that direction, but the breeze came from everywhere, like 180-degree shifts. But I had fun making my chaff starburst as well, so I didn't really mind. Okay, any questions about winnowing?
We have none that came into the chat, but
Okay.
just a comment from me.
Mhm.
Just it's so simple. You didn't need anything fancy. I'm just blown away at how
Yeah.
well that works.
Yeah. Well, you can complicate it. Get one of those, what are those machines where, you know, if you want to make a piece of toast, it goes through all these complicated procedures. Okay. Okay, my last slide is storing your seeds. So I keep my seed in the freezer in a plastic freezer container for freezer jam. I put my seed in there. Make sure you label it well so that it doesn't actually accidentally get put into some muffins in between your processing and your planting in the next year. Really, any seed storage guidelines hold for you. Flax seeds can be frozen for storage. Unlike some other seeds where that would be a bad thing. So that is definitely a viable option. If you don't like freezing seeds for planting, storing them in a cool, dark place will also work well for the seeds. It'll still last through to your next season. I've kept flax seeds in my freezer for at least a couple of years and still had viable crops. So once it's put in cold storage, it should stay viable for a fair amount of time. And again, don't allow it to get damp. It shouldn't be damp when it goes in. And depending on your container or how it's set up in your freezer, if you're doing freezer defrosting or something and it has a chance of getting damp, then try to avoid that. And any final questions on seed harvesting?
No, we have none in the chat.
Okay, great. Okay, so next week we are going to be talking about retting. So this is that's a big topic, and there will probably be lots of questions. There's going to be I'm not going to have time to ask people about their experiences because I'm going to have a lot to say, and I'm going to be pushing right up to the hour on that one. It's a big topic. So that'll be a good one, exciting and stinky and smelly. And although we don't have smell-o-vision yet, so I'll be the only one enjoying this smell as I'm preparing the videos for this. What else? So there are a couple of things for you to note. The next plant along is, well, you want to take over for this, Lisa?
Sure, and we had one more question pop in from
Okay.
Pat.
Mm-hmm.
She says, I have a flax question. I have both straight and curved flax because of the lodging. Does this make a difference in the final fiber?
No, not in the final fiber. It makes it more difficult to store your your fiber before you process it, just because storing something that's curved requires more real estate than stacking nice straight bundles, but the fiber itself is going to be fine.
Okay, if there are no more final questions, I think we'll wrap it up for today.
Okay, so I still want to talk about the Flax equipment I have for sale, which I'll do after we turn off the recording. So if you wanted to talk about this screen, Lisa, and then I'll move
Sure.
on. Okay.
Sure, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out and watching our presentation today. As always, our recording will be available later this afternoon. We'll see everyone next week for Reading. Just a reminder that if anyone wants to share any of their content for Fiber Focus, to please contact Flannery, and her email is there. And also that registration is open for our conference that is happening this October.
Okay.